Hello, everybody. This is Matt from the Construct 3D team. We're going to get started here. So on behalf of the Construct 3D organizing team, I would like to say thank you and hello. This is another exciting session of the Construct 3D Summer Symposium 2020, which continues to grow into August. I'll get to that in a second. We know that educators are now facing new challenges, and Construct 3D community of educators and industry leaders are here to work together with you to figure out where and how we go from here. So some quick housekeeping. If you go to our website, construct3dconf.com, you can click on the summer schedule under programming to see our upcoming sessions. There is a bunch of stuff that is being queued up for August. We are keeping this thing rolling. There have been a lot of questions about new territories for us to cover. And so there's some exciting stuff. So please keep checking. One of the things on there, if you have been following the Low Fidelity Prototyping Masterclass series, you should check that out. You have 2 more sessions coming up in early August, and a really exciting talk on why front-loading your online class may create the best remote teaching experience on August 11th. I got messages from Liz right before jumping on. I think we have 2 or 3 other speakers that will probably be racing into the schedule in the next couple of days. So a lot of exciting stuff here. Thank you all for joining for that. So for today, in this Construct 3D Summer Symposium webinar, using Make projects to engage students and document their project processes, we'll join Dale Dougherty of Make Community and Frank and Lauren of engineering.com and Make projects, and they will share the inspiration behind the Make projects platform and provide a brief demonstration of the platform, reviewing the basics of setting up a project, documenting the project over time, how to use the platform to receive feedback and guidance by experts, and finally, how to use one of the pre-programmed project templates to accelerate your work. The webinar will conclude with a discussion and reflection on the future of project documentation and collaboration in Maker education, which is another reminder to check the chat, and you'll see the link from Liz for the where the questions will be growing over the course of the session. Jump in, that's been really lively and very productive in past sessions. So don't be afraid to pin your questions as you go so that we have exciting stuff at the end. So with that, I think, Lauren, are you gonna take it away?
Sure, absolutely. And I just wanted to introduce as well Matthew from Rice University as also on our panelists, and he's going to be talking a little bit today. And Renata Vaccaro, who's the co-founder of the Project Board platform, is also joining us as well. So yeah, let's jump right into it. Really looking forward, as Matt mentioned, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and we'd love to spend as much time as possible with questions at the end. So if we look at the agenda, we went through number 1 already, check. So we're gonna go a little bit into the background and vision, and Dale's gonna talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the presentation of Make projects and understanding like really what is it and could it help you, and then go straight into a demo of what it is. And then we could talk a little bit about the options of Make projects and the features and things like that. And then we want to, as I said, spend as much time as possible on questions and discussions because I think that's where the most value hopefully will come out of. So Dale, do you want to take it away? Oh, I think you are muted.
Our phone was ringing. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Liz and Matt and Chip and others. I just have to say fondly remember Construct 3D at Houston was probably the last out-of-town trip for me and many of you as well. So it was good to see many people there. I just want to give it, we're going to go into things here, but one of the reasons we are doing Make projects from my point of view is we see that the centrality of projects to being a maker, that I've kind of defined different categories. There's sort of a 0 to maker, which is like you hope to be a maker, you want to learn skills, you want to develop. But once you decide you're a maker, you you have projects. That's almost the only thing that not necessarily skills, but you begin doing things and you want to share them with other people and talk about them. And one of my experiences early on was going to maker spaces and such, and I'd see such great projects, and I'd say, like, how come I don't know about what people are doing? And even the people in the makerspace didn't know what people are doing, even though they were proximate to each other. And so, you know, certainly events like Maker Faire were one way to flush those projects out from the community into a public space for a moment. And I think we've always had the idea that this should be easier online, not just to publish the step-by-step procedures of a project, but also the story behind it. And particularly with Make projects, really covering it from the beginning of how it starts, how it develops, how people iterate over a project, to have that captured in a way that is valuable to the makers or makers themselves, but also to others who want to help and do this. So, you know, today we're going to be talking about this platform, which we've partnered with engineering.com on, and talented people like Lauren and Renata have really been designers and developers of this platform. But you know, in this moment now, which I feel like we have arrived at, and you know, there's a real you know, education is really in turmoil right now, and there's a real question of how can we continue many of the things that we believe to be valuable. You know, some of this in that slide presentation, you know, that those changes, if they go away and you can't be next to each other because of COVID-19, how can we continue to collaborate? How can we continue to encourage and support and engage young people in developing projects? So that's the purpose of the talk today, to really, you know, this is a direction for us. We'd love your feedback, but we want to be helpful. We want to figure out how this platform can be used. We think it has a lot of the basic stuff right here for doing that. And Matthew will talk more about that later on. So let me turn it over to Lauren, and she's going to go through this here. But, you know, I'll leave you with one thought. I've always thought that in one sentence, the way to change, particularly K-12 education, but really the experience of education, was to invite students to do projects as much on their own ideas and their own problem solving skills, their own creative skills. The more they drive the project, the better. And the more they share the project beyond their own experience, beyond their class or with the teacher, out to the community, the more powerful it is. So with that, Lauren, please take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dale. Yeah, and I think you kind of said it perfectly about, you know, why we're here and what Make Projects is. And, you know, just to, you know, recap, it's essentially a community. You know, it is a tool that, you know, educators and teachers can use, but it really is a community of people that come together to not only share a project, but also develop it as well. So, and Dale, you said a great thing, which is like the story of the project. And it's really about that process that really makes Make Project what it is. And, you know, a key thing is that we also know when people are making projects, it's a personal thing. And so we created a platform that, you know, you could either be private. So if you just have yourself or your team or your classmates or your class, you can all be on one project, or you can share it to the broader, you know, 25,000 plus community to get, you know, further feedback, further exposure and whatnot. So we created it so that it could be both for any person, and you can toggle between either the public or the private side. And I think what was great is that, you know, Dale mentioned that it is this great passion project between engineering.com and make.co. And we really did come together because we saw that there was this need that, you know, we could really help. And so I'm going to actually throw it back to Dale for 2 seconds, just to, for those of you who don't know what Make is, it's amazing, it's awesome. And I just want Dale to talk a little bit about, you know, what Make is, if you don't know, and we'll talk a little bit about
yeah.
as well.
Well, you know, obviously Make, you know, Make Community is, you know, we produce the magazine, it's now a quarterly magazine, and we've been doing that for 16 years. We we produce books and maker fairs, which, you know, is a challenge this year, but actually we've used the Make Projects platform to, in May, produce exhibits for a virtual maker fair. And we continue to work with others on that. So we've been doing Family Maker Camp since March to encourage parents to work with their kids and engage them in playful making. And what's the last? And then make projects there. So, you know, I think we are really interested in sharing the know-how of makers to create more makers and to enable and empower people to become part of this community. It's sort of, I guess Jillian probably can tell us 195 maker fairs worldwide over the last year or so, includes school fairs, community fairs. And, you know, I think some of the framework that we're interested in Make Projects also is how do we, you know, what was really valuable to makers was to share their work and get feedback from other people. And that can be done really well online as well. We may not have the, whatever kind of car that is with the shot fire and the stormtroopers walking in and among a crowd here, but we can do the core things of Maker Faire, which is to connect makers and have them provide useful feedback to each other.
And for engineering.com, we are an editorial content site and app. And, you know, really focusing in on the engineering community and all of the interesting, you know, stories related to a lot of those industries. And so we do everything from articles to research reports to webinars to white papers and ebooks, and we do some great videos. And it's really there to not only showcase like what's going on in the world, but then going deep into those specific topics that sometimes you can't really get anywhere else. So really focusing on those engineering minds and the engineering method. And, you know, other aspects of our business, we have our publishing, which is our main business. We also have the #1 engineering forum called Eng Tips, where a bunch of people, mostly professional engineers, go online, ask questions, and try to figure out some things. And then we created the project platform, which is called Project Board. And Project Board is the infrastructure that runs Make Projects. So if you hear us saying Make Projects and Project Board, you'll understand why. And then also we have some key relationships. Many of you might know some of these people. And these are all, you know, incredible companies, organizations that really are there to promote the engineering way. So going back to Make Projects and understanding, you know, what are some of the main features and how it potentially could relate to universities and maker spaces within universities. Really, we thought about, you know, how we could showcase this is through the process or the life cycle of a project. And so, you know, you start a class assignment, you work on a project, you're organizing it, you're noodling on it, you're figuring out things, you're throwing things out, like all of that. Then you need to get to a point where you are, you know, want to showcase your final product or idea. And we have all of those kind of features, you know, meant for that specific process. And so, you know, when we start the class assignment, you know, we have things like templates, you can create teams, and we have, as I mentioned before, the public and private. When you're working on a project, you know, we know that there's a lot of different ways that ideas come about. And whether it's through, like, you need to jot something down on a whiteboard, or you want to, you know, snap some images or files, all of that we have in Make Projects, which I'll show in a second on our demo. And then we also are really integrated with other tools out there, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to be this closed box that you have to do everything in. We want to be integrated with all the other things that you're using out there because we think they're great. And so we have that ability. As well as, you know, private and group messages. And so you can do a lot of things and organize a lot of your thoughts all on Make Projects. And then in terms of final presentation, I think I could talk about this, but I'd rather show you what this means in the demo. But we have things like an Instagram-like visuals so that you can easily navigate through a project and showcase it in a really fun way. And then the big thing is that, you know, once again, it's not just living in a classroom or a maker space. You can take the projects further. And because Make Projects is both a private space and a public kind of forum for everyone to give feedback on, the project can have more wings beyond a semester. And so we're gonna right now is jump into a live demo, and we have 3 major components that we'll talk about. The first is the overall capabilities of Make Projects, because it also is a platform for makers in general. We want to kind of showcase that you right now can go on to Make Projects, start a project, get some friends, and boom, cool. Like, you can do that now for free, and that's awesome. So we want to show a little bit of that. We want to jump into, you know, a student competition that came out of COVID, the response of COVID, and that was really, really fun and really great experience. We'll talk about that. And then I want to bring Matthew on from Rice to talk a little bit about how he used Make Projects for his Rice University student group, and then we can go from there. So let's hop right into it. So this is Make Projects. You can see here, this is the homepage. The homepage is, as I mentioned, we have the private and the public projects. This is a place for all of the public projects to live and get some broader recognition. And so we have different categories. We have feature projects. You can organize based off of, you know, the categories that you're most interested in. And then if we jump, you know, straight into a project, let me go to my bookmarks here. You know, what we see is that a project is organized in a couple of different ways. So you have, you know, your header, which is the ability to kind of say what the project is, and, you know, the classic image, and you can add teams. But what we really wanted to do was create the ability for you to look at a project as it's developing in a very visual way, and you can jump into different pieces, because we all know that sometimes the process of creating a project or developing idea is not this beautiful linear thing. You kind of jump from A, B, C, and then back to A. And so that's why we created this ability to have sections where you can, you know, have some ideas and develop them, and then go back to some existing ideas and maybe think, oh, and jump back. So if you look at just even here, you know, some new ideas, what happens is then people come on and they can, you know, depending on if it's public or private, so in this case it was a public project, and you can come on and give some ideas about, you know, some ideas for the project. And so here, someone used the whiteboard to document an idea. You know, there's a lot of string of, you know, collaboration, ideas. And then one of the things that we did is, no matter if you are the owner of the project or if you are a contributor of a project, you have the ability to showcase your ideas in whatever way that you want. So you can upload photos, you can do links, you can add files, like we were saying, like Google files or Google links, videos, and also we have the whiteboard tool. So anyone has all of those things at their disposal. And so if I go into, you know, that's a project. Now, if you wanted to start a new project, once again, anyone that logs in right now can start a project for free, no problem. We have different templates. We know that this is very important because sometimes starting from a blank piece of paper is terrifying. And so, you know, if you have an instructional video or instructional project, you can create it. Then we have some information for you to fill out, and you can do that as you go. And as you see here, when you save it, you can make it public or private, and you can come back to it later. And you can always find all of those projects in your My Projects tab and access them very, very quickly. And so when you look at the navigation, we also have things like resources, because once again, if you're working on a project, you want to take sometimes your project further than, you know, your garage, the classroom. And so we have a lot of different abilities to take your projects further. And then now I'm going to transition into the second part of the demo, which is, oh, actually, before I do that, pause, 2 more things. I want to show the community chat. So this is where if you want to have conversations that are not related to a specific project, you can do so by, starting a new private conversation or a new group conversation. And then we also have our profiles. And in the profile, you have your projects, your contributions, who you're following. And then we have this cool little thing called the engagement leaderboard, which, for people that are commenting and liking and really adding a lot of value to projects, that all adds up in this really cool algorithm that then they have rankings. And this person, actually, this is a perfect transition. She came from the Youth Science Canada online STEM fair, and she was a rock star in terms of not only showcasing her own projects, but giving a lot of feedback to other people. So when you look at let's go straight to that. So when you look at the top navigation bar, we not only have the ability to have projects in Make projects, but because Project Board is the infrastructure, we can create custom platforms for those who need it. So for example, engineering.com. This is the same kind of Netflix style platform where you can see all different projects or different stories, but it's the same sort of look and feel. And then there is Youth Science Canada. So Youth Science Canada came to us, Rennie, who is the CEO, came to us and said, our STEM fair was canceled this year because of COVID, but we have thousands of kids, grade 7 to grade 12, who have all these amazing ideas and these amazing science fair projects, but they have nowhere to go. And so within a month, Renata's development team, who she's on here right now, they worked so hard to put basically a custom site together for Youth Science Canada, and this is the result. And so we made a lobby for all the students because, obviously you'd love to be in person, like a Maker Fair, you'd love to be there, but this is a way to feel like you're there even though you're probably sitting on your couch. And on it, we had a welcome video. This was from the Canadian Space Agency, an astronaut welcoming the students to the fair. In Canada, it is English and French, and so we had the ability to showcase the projects and the experience in both English and French, depending on who you are and what you need. And if we jump right into the exhibit hall, what you'll see, again, same sort of setup with the categories and the Netflix style rows, but they had their custom platform and custom categories. And this is important because if schools or departments of schools really say, I want to have my own kind of space, that's awesome. We can create that. And we do that in a way that obviously connects back to the main community. And so if you're looking here, we have things like awards. So we created the ability to, once the students submitted a project, judges could go online and pick the top ones based off of a series of criteria. And what we did for the students, again, was create different templates. And so these templates were based off of the scientific method. And if you go here, and you have to answer some questions because it was a competition. Let me just get this out of the way. Oops. All right. You click a category, and then it prepares a project. And this was really helpful for students so that they had, not only very clear steps of what they needed to do to be judged, but it was very easy for the viewers and the judges to be able to recognize and show their process. All right. So that is Youth Science Canada. And what I wanted to do before I move on was showcase one of the projects. And so, let me go here. Let me go to my bookmarks here. This one was by a grade 7 student who was, trying to figure out if brainwaves actually helped, or actually music helped with concentration rather than deferred from it. And they created, a video you could see here. She had incredible amounts of feedback from other students and teachers. And so you can see all the feedback here. And so it's been a really great, experience to do that. And overall, just the numbers, we had over 1,500 students apply. We had over 600 projects that were approved. There were many more that weren't approved. And we had over 8,000 engagements, which was really great, because if you think about, right now, there's so many things that kids are, seeing at home. They're on YouTube, they're on TikTok. I mean, and, the fact that we were able to capture their attention and get them to really engage online was really great. And so if I were to go back now, so now we're going to go into the third aspect of the demo, and I'm going to hand it over to Matthew to talk about how his group utilized Make projects for Rice University.
Thank you, Lauren. I am an associate teaching professor at Rice's engineering prototyping facility called the Oshman Engineering Design Kitchen. And like many of you educators listening, in March, we were forced to shift to an online capacity, which is a real struggle with project-based work, especially when they're creating physical artifacts. The course that we eventually moved on to Make projects is Introduction to Engineering Design. And this course, not only is it in person, but it's in teams. And the students have an incredible sense of community that's born of working in close proximity to each other, but also documenting their process using technical briefs, which are 2 or 3 page documents that you would send to a technical superior. We pivoted to Make projects as a way to include that community as part of the process, and as well as transparently documenting the steps that the students were taking. And so one of the things that was really helpful about Make projects was that there's a waterfall flow or timeline that the students were able to utilize to document each time they met and did work. They threw that up on their wall, and we were able to see what they did and then comment. And so the web of mentors we use, the co-instructors, the teaching assistants, the writing mentors, the outside mentors, everyone had a vested interest in the success of the project. And what Lauren is showing right now is Disneyland, which is a project that was with the serveries on campus. Their dish drop, where they use non-disposable plates and silverware, has to be placed in specific bins, and it's a traffic jam when everybody is trying to race to their next class. And so this project sought to sort of organize and create a structural flow for the dish drop area that every college has. And what you're looking at is the grid view of what the students were able to report every single time they met, which was at minimum Tuesdays and Thursdays for class, but the work they did outside of it. And so Make projects allowed us to not only post the products of the engineering design process, like their Gantt chart or sketches, which acted as analogs for prototypes, but also CAD drawings, and then ultimately videos of their work. And you can see that the whiteboard function, if you scroll down there, was really helpful for the co-instructor and myself to make comments that were rich in content.
And do you want to quickly also talk about now kind of moving forward, what you are thinking for your students in the next semester or so?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Lauren showed off how the UScience Canada was able to use a template that involved the scientific method. Well, at Rice, when we're teaching engineering design, we're using the engineering design process. And this process is an iterative, decision-based process that any engineer, whether it's a computer scientist or a civil engineer, would go through the steps of. And in order to enable people, educators who are also teaching project-based courses, to use Make projects easier, with Make projects, we've created templates of the 7 steps that the engineering design process falls under as we teach it at Rice and have for the last 10 years, in order to help others populate these steps or also indicate which step is next when they're going through a project, either formally in a class or as a maker looking for some structure to the process. And so it starts with clarifying team assignment, and it moves all the way through prototyping and then a final report out. And maybe if we could click into one of those, we can show how, oh, my favorite, evaluate solution ideas. So here's where students will take brainstormed ideas that are broadly divergent, and they will converge on 1 or 2 solutions that they should prototype. And so even if you are not in a class and you're just a maker working on a project, these templates help you follow step by step the engineering design process to exit with a solution that may serve your user's needs or your constraints. And so here you can see screen solutions, which is where you take many solutions down to few, and then morph solutions, where you might mix the solutions, and then score the solution ideas, where you might evaluate based on your criteria and take few solutions down to 1 or 2. And then when you add in your own information, you can delete that template, and what remains is your own report out of what these steps are.
Excellent. Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Matthew. We're going to now go back to the presentation, and obviously if there's any questions, we'd love to talk about them in a few minutes. And so just to recap, because I think we threw a ton at you in, I don't know, 15 minutes or so with this demo. And so, overall, how could it be helpful for you? First off is that we have the ability to have templates that Matthew, so perfectly talked about, and it's a way to, not only document, but collaborate and give feedback all in real time. And so these are things that we can work on with you to build if you so choose. We have the collections, and so under the education category, we have for Rice, we created a subcategory or a collection that's all for Rice. So as projects evolve and as the semesters evolve, you can go back to your Rice University subcategory and see all the projects that were made and, and potentially, kept on going, right? So just because a semester ends doesn't mean that you couldn't continue working on a project. And then we have this class chat. So the ability for teachers and students to be able to have conversations that may not be related to, the project activity itself. And when we look at, ultimately, if you want to have a fully customized site that is just for your department or just for your makerspace or just for your school, that's fantastic. We can do that, and we can talk about how. There's a lot on this screen, but ultimately what it comes down to is, if you think about right now, you can go on, use Make projects for free, and you can use all the features as is. But if you want things like customized templates and a collection for all of your projects and a lot of other, aspects like, support and things and badges and awards, all of that, you might want to go to the next level, which is the personalized features. All the way up to the customized platform, which once again, we are happy to talk to any of you about what you're looking for and how we can help. And that's it. Are we like, oh, we're even early, fantastic. So that's us in a nutshell. And so what we'd love to do is open up for questions and really just spend as much time as possible having a conversation.
Great. And by the way, this is Matt again from Construct 3D. We've been collecting some questions in the questions form. I can help feed some of those to you. Excellent. But also you could grab some that you're interested in. People have been really tearing through. So I think I want to start with a fun one actually for Dale. So Dale, is this the longest that you've ever been without traveling? And if so, how have you kept in touch with your infinite contacts and educators and makers worldwide?
Yeah, it's definitely the longest. I said that I've probably been more at home this last 5 months than I've been during, collectively 5 years or so. So, but Zoom is probably the answer. One of the things I started doing is writing about the what I call Plan C, which is the maker response, starting in March to the COVID-19, and then developed a weekly program inviting people to come on and talk about what they were doing. And we have makers from Chicago or Atlanta, and we've been focusing more on education the last few weeks. Librarians, and 2 weeks ago, informal educators. Tonight, actually at 4 o'clock Pacific time, we have a panel of K-12 teachers. And so, in some ways, it's just trying to convene people and talk to them. I've been reaching out to people when I can and just do interviews and talk to them and find out what they're what's going on in their lives. But in many ways, it's a little easier to just do a meeting and connect with people. But I think the physical contact of being in person and seeing things is definitely something I miss.
Excellent. Thanks for that response. So then the next question is for Lauren and Renata about Project Board, and just to see if you have some thoughts about how creation of teams and projects during this era will, what are the trends that you're seeing now while everybody's sort of stuck at home, or mostly stuck at home, and how do you expect groups and teams and ways of using the platform to change as people start congregating again in schools, geography, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I think that right now, by necessity, people are having to go online, and for what we've seen with projects is, we see the engagement very, very well in terms of people sharing ideas, and for the most part, what we love is the fact that everyone is being incredibly positive and supportive, especially around the projects that are related to COVID-19. But when we think about moving forward towards potentially like a hybrid model which I think is the best model, where you have in person and online, is that this really becomes this complementary tool for you to really organize your work, because you might be in a makerspace or in the classroom for 4 hours a day or 2 hours a day, whatever, depends. But then you have to go home and there's, you're still tinkering on things. And so it becomes this way to, really easily continue a project, even if you aren't together. And so in my mind, it's, I think, going to be the best when you have kind of both the in-person and online. Renata, did you want to add anything else?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, great.
No, it's really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Question for Matthew. You gave some hints with the template discussion before about ways that engineering design project structure work. Wondered if you could talk about your thoughts when working with students about helping encourage them to find a discipline of going through methodologies like this and documenting their projects.
Thank you, Matt. That's a great question. A wise person once said that the engineers who cannot communicate ultimately end up working for the engineers who can communicate. At the OEDK and at Rice, we prioritize communication as an equal skill to analytical skills taught in engineering design. And that is why we have embedded communication in every class that the OEDK has in the engineering design curriculum. In particular, in Introduction to Engineering Design, as I mentioned before, the students write these technical briefs, which is in of themselves a genre of writing that the students need practice on. But there's also oral communication and there's visual communication in graphs and graphing. Documentation in engineering is voluminous. And our seniors who take capstone have to write hundreds of pages of documents, and they give us pushback every year. And then something else that happens is 2 years later, they come back and they say, I work in industry, and I had no idea that the documentation responsibility was twofold, threefold. So we try and make sure that the students know that communication is important, and we model that by having it in every one of our courses. Now, documentation is the hardest part when you're doing a project. It's not fun. It requires thorough, detail-oriented work. And who doesn't want to just build and then stop? But it is critically important, especially in capstone projects or projects, so that we prevent projects from dying on the vine or just getting to a certain point, stopping, and everybody walking away. And one of the things that I think Make projects can do is not only help encourage documentation and make it easier, but also allow breadcrumbs to be dropped off so people and future projects can pick it up, continue, and ultimately finish these projects.
Thank you, Matthew. It's really helpful. Question for Lauren, and also obviously could extend to the whole team there. educators wanting to know if you could walk them through how a teacher would set this up, and in particular, some questions around setting up their own courses with student projects. If there's a limited number of classes or projects, they'd love to, hear some practical step-by-steps.
Yeah, great, excellent question. So first off, there's no limit to the amount of projects you can create. So there could be 1,001 projects, and that's great. So that's like the first thing. So for a teacher, it depends on what they're looking for. So right now, a teacher, if they wanted to go on for free, just start a project, they can click the start button, click a template, and then fill in some of the things that the students need to do. And then the students would create their own projects, and then they would work together on that, and you can link them. So that's number one. Now, if a teacher wanted to have a template, like what Matthew was showing, what we could do is we can work with them on that, create the template that is specific to that assignment so that they don't have to do all of the work. And then from there, we can actually create a sub-template within the project itself so that a student would click it, and then they would launch their own project to be able to fill out all of the different sections, right? So that makes it easy for them, and that will automatically link back to the main project that the teacher runs, so that just say you have 20 kids in a class, and there are, each of the students is pairs in two, so there's 10 projects. So you can have those 10 projects all working simultaneously linked back to the parent project. So that is very easy because, ultimately sometimes if you're working on projects, they go all over the place. You can easily view them in the project, My Projects tab, especially if you're a teacher and you're in all of the different student projects. But the way that I just explained helps it so that it even makes it more organized. Does that help? I don't know if that helped the person's question. But that, for example, I can go into more like step-by-step details. If we didn't do it clearly enough, that'd be a good thing for us to work on.
Well, one thing to think about is we're going to send these notes back to all the attendees. Mm-hmm. So maybe leave some ways for them to contact you, such as that nice little contact right there in the slide. So one follow-up. I think it was maybe if this was at the very beginning, some of us missed it. Were there clear details about the cost of working with Make projects? Is it a subscription, or are there certain, does a school, that kind of information would be helpful.
Yeah, so it's tiny up here, so our apologies. But so essentially what it is, again, free for anyone that wants to use a platform as is right now, and you could start today. If you want to have, templates and other aspects like, custom private chats and, support and things like that, that would be $1,000 per month, or there would be a discounted yearly rate for unlimited projects and unlimited users. So what that means though is that it would be by department. So the mechanical engineering department of Rice University could have their own kind of section for $1,000 a month. The electrical would have their own, and that would be how it would be set up. And then the large kind of custom one, if you want to have your own categories, we would have to talk on an individual basis because, you might not want all of these things listed on this list. And so we can come up with a quote for what that is.
Yeah. Hey, Lauren, there are a couple questions in the Q&A. We can probably address those pretty quickly. Scott Drapeau asked, would you consider this a platform, a learning management system would replace an LMS like Moodle or Canvas? I don't think it's meant to be an LMS at all. So it's really trying to do something different. Rupinda Tara has two questions. Are there integrations with other communications platforms such as Zoom or MS Teams? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure exactly what that integration would be, other than maybe Rupinda could write a little bit about maybe launching it or something like that. But And then this one I think is a pretty good one for the Make side. Is are there any plans to allow viewing of engineering data like CAD files or 3D files, sort of a 3D viewer?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
We don't have like a 3D viewer at this point, but we do have the ability to upload a CAD file and then someone can easily download it.
Right, just as files, but not as a shared view of that.
So I have a question for the whole crew from perhaps different perspectives. It's perched under a question for Frank. So even Frank can come join this if he'd like. So from your perspective, how have you seen the educational routes for engineers looking to enter industry enter programs or industry change over the past couple of years, plus the snapshot of the last 5 months? How are students staying competitive with all this disruption?
That's a great question. And when we started this development of Project Board over 3 years ago, we basically asked Renata and Lauren and the team to just go and investigate what the current engineering environment was like, and what they were doing, and what they were looking to help them with being able to do not only work in schools but also in call it the real world. And the genesis of Project Board started to evolve. And then personally, this has been just very enjoyable to be part of the team. And what I learned was that even though I went to school quite a few years ago, as probably Dale is the only other person here I can kind of relate to in terms of how many years experience I've been at it, not much has changed. I remember studying in engineering, going to the labs and doing all types of experiments and hands-on. And obviously the computers we used in those days were a lot slower and a lot bigger, a lot more expensive. But the general curriculum, as I've been watching it, hasn't changed much. The process, the engineering methods haven't really changed that much. And the core curriculum, and what really got me really excited about this was that, hey, we can basically help to do those things that were not capable of being done in an automated way, as Matthew described, the documentation of it, the interaction. And then what I got excited about was the fact that this is available 24/7. It's available on my phone, and it's available that I can connect with students and at their pace, or that we can connect with the profession, so that it all of a sudden started to kind of evolve into something that we were pretty pleased with when we first announced it 2 years ago. When then we looked at the whole process of the engineering education, and then COVID just accelerated everything. In my mind, this was inevitable. We were going to have this hybrid learning and a very, very good tools, because I believe that in the education world, those tools haven't really evolved to the same level that the professional world is used to working with. And so this is a tool. It's not an LMS. It's not anything that is going to be comprehensive for a complete school, but it's a really effective tool for people who are working in an environment where projects are an important part of learning. And the ability to engage is going to help that. But ultimately, it should allow the students to learn and retain more of the core stuff that in engineering has been taught forever. And I'm pretty excited about that.
Excellent. Thank you, Frank. So one more question that has populated under the questions for Lauren section, but is probably also of general interest. Make Projects looks like an awesome tool, yet the internet is a land of temporary constructions and ideas. Is there a way to export a project into PDF format or something similar for posterity, noting the existence of videos and other media?
No, yet, but that's
in a word.
That's a good point. We did, intentionally, when we were looking at the template for Rice, and Christina Matthews at Rice University was putting it together with Matthew, and we had the section for final presentation that is really a way to summarize all of your work in a way that's very, very simple and clear and clean. But know that we don't have a way to export just yet, but we do have the way to share. So you can share it at Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and a bunch of other places, or a copy link that you can share over email. So we have that ability, but not necessarily make it like a local file on your computer yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I want to say that too, is that one thing, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but we're just getting started, and I think that like questions like that is exactly what we want to hear. Is what are things that really are valuable to you that we're not doing, and we really want to make sure that we're having that conversation with you all to make sure that if you do use Make projects, it's really helpful. So
it would probably is sort of in line with what you were just talking about there, and questions about how you're developing the platform. There's a question for Renata. I think somebody says, given your past experience presenting around advocacy for women and diversity within the tech space, what are steps you have taken with Project Board that help make it safe and productive space for contributors of all backgrounds to be heard and given voice? And somebody added, great to see women rocking the leaderboards there, I guess, during the presentation.
That's a good question. It has been really important to us to make sure that Make Projects and Project Board is a safe place. And so we actually moderate all public comments on the platform. And we also have a reporting feature. So if there is an inappropriate comment anywhere, it can be reported, and we can, depending on the severity, remove the user, or at least delete the comment and reprimand the user.
Great, thank you.
Can I just add, Renata, this is
Sure.
very important. The statistics are very clear. The number of women, especially young ladies and girls that are embracing the platform, using it, that are going into the science and engineering field has been outstanding. The demographics are varied, and then what we've got is the demographics of virtually right around across the world, of any race, any type of background, and it's really heartwarming for us to see how this platform is really embraced by everyone, and how passionate we are about to making sure that minority groups in particular who are require assistance get really good attention. It's free for them to use and to really advance, and it's a very important part of our philosophy. I know Dale and I really talked about the importance of making sure that we reach out to all kinds of communities to make sure that education and learning is at the forefront.
Fantastic. So we have a couple more technical questions that are in the Q&A. They probably should move over to the questions sheet. And then there's a bunch of questions. There's some really lively stuff going back and forth with Matthew's section with questions about best practices, things like brainstorming and critical feedback and that kind of thing. So we have an option here. If one of the panelists would like to take one of the areas and to reflect on as a group, we could do that. Or we could ask Matthew to share some of his some of the resources he could point people to for some of the engineering design best practices that he uses. Well,
if everyone could, who is on the Google Doc, could scroll down to the bottom, there's a number of resources that are related to Make projects that Lauren has showcased in the presentation. And I want to make sure that this webinar is impactful for all of the educators who are using project-based design and looking for ways to pivot. These resources here are going to be fantastic starting points for how you could employ this in your classes in the fall or even in the future. And so the best resources that I can point you to right now that I'd love for you to, if you have time, spend time on, is seeing how this platform has been used already, either with Rice University's projects or UScience Canada. And then if you think you are ready to move to the next step of incorporating into your own class, take a little time and look at the templates that have been set up and conceptualize how that could be used in your own class, because I believe that it could be helpful for you and could simplify a lot of the work of setting up the class in your own LMS. Even though Make Projects is not an LMS, it is a perfect place for students to document.
Those are fantastic resources, and definitely I would imagine that educators who are watching this either now or on video repeat will be hungry for resources to go and really roll up their sleeves and try this, get a project going. So
Yeah,
we've run.
hey, Matt, can I just
Dale,
ask-
you want to jump in?
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
for
just
it.
it's great that Matthew and Rice have that sort of template, but we're also kind of really interested in broader ideas from the community about what the
Right.
what a high school template look like. What is the structure necessary? We've even thought about this for Maker Faire, because often when we have someone apply to Maker Faire, they just give us a description, a photo, maybe a video link. It was pretty informal because most of the work they did was at the fair itself. And as we started to move it online, we thought, well, now the online entry for that exhibit has to bear more weight, right? It has to explain, more than what that person might have otherwise explained in person. And I was looking at capstone projects and online and trying to see, is there any model for that we see? And I will put one plug in here, is that we educational community should move from capstone to keystone or cornerstone or something, that projects are central to learning. They're not something that occurs at the end of the process. And
Excellent.
so, but what makes a good presentation, or what makes what are the things, like in the UScience Canada of asking what, why, how, we can look at it at that level. But I think this is still an art that has yet to be understood. And it's not to make it rigid, it's more to elicit responses and to encourage people to think about it. As Matthew Wettergreen said, a lot of people don't look at documentation as being interesting, but because they don't look at it as communication is one problem. For those of you who know me, I started down this path, not from an engineering background, but from a documentation point of view. I was a technical writer. And so I've always kind of liked that side of, how do you put into plain language what's going on here, how it works, and what it does.
Are you going to have a place to curate and showcase maybe some of these very the wide range of uses that might come to the platform?
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty interesting thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And there was a question pinned for you that you've already kind of half answered just by this, which is that Make over the years has experimented with so many online, community-ware projects. You seem particularly excited about this one. What helps this one really be exciting for you as a opportunity to move forward?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, some might recall we had a platform called MakerShare that we developed with some funding from Intel. And, unfortunately, just as the project got finished, Intel pulled out of it. It was to some degree designed to help them and their educational efforts in 18 different countries that were Maker related. So I think really this platform is part of I guess an idea that has had a long germination of how do we get people to share their projects more widely and to learn from each other. That was the core of the Maker community, was collaboration and sharing. And it should, it isn't just the final project, or it isn't just the step-by-step procedure. It's actually the process, and that's what excited me about Make Projects, is I could see you starting a project and Make Projects, not just coming once you finish the project. So I think that idea of like a notebook or a journal or a team collaborative space, workspace, seemed to me really valuable.
Fantastic. So we've reached the end of our session. A lot of the panelists were adding little notes and to the questions page. We're going to send these results back out to all the attendees and those who signed up as a great resource for them to draw on, and encourage. You have the contact right there to be able to reach out and get some of your specific questions about the platform answered, and you have a last chance to pin some questions and try to encourage these panelists to answer in the forum, so it can be shared out with everybody. So thank you all very much for coming today. And if you check the schedule, you'll see more things coming up. Next up are a couple of pieces that Matthew will be leading. Those low fidelity prototyping masterclasses are looking pretty killer and are pretty popular. So I highly recommend that you get signed up and get your gear together. There were things like cereal was one of the components in the previous one. Yeah, they're pretty great activity. So thank you very much to all the panelists and presenters for coming and sharing, and hoping to see educators benefit from this and really take advantage of this platform and the resources of your collective presence.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you all.